Hello everyone, and a very good morning or afternoon depending on where you're joining us from today. Thank you very much for coming along to this webinar to discuss supporting your staff in identifying and communicating the wider impact of their research. We should be taking about 45 minutes of your time today, including an opportunity for a designated question and answer session at the end. If you are familiar with the GoToMeeting software that we are using, you might know that there's a questions option as part of the panel on the right-hand side of your screen. If you would like to ask questions as and when they occur to you, please feel free to type them up and send them over via the panel there, and we're quite happy to take these as we're going through. We'll also be making a recording of this webinar available as well, so if you wish to view it again or share it with your colleagues, that will be an option for you. This will be available mid-next week. At the moment you are all on mute because the feedback can sometimes affect the quality of the sound, so if you do have any questions or issues you would like to raise, please do so in the questions panel. So firstly, just a couple of introductions. That's me, Sarah Vaughan, on the left-hand side. I'm the events manager for Epigeum, and we're the organization that puts together the online courses. A large part of my role is looking after our collaboration and implementation workshops, as well as our product launches and online events such as this. I'll let Professor Jed Hall and Sarah Grant introduce themselves now.
Thanks, Sarah, and for the promotion, which is great. I shall get back to Leeds and let them know that my salary needs to go up. Hi, everyone. So yeah, my name is Jed Hall, and I work at the University of Leeds in a staff development unit, and my principal aim, my role is to help all staff at the university to engage with impact and deliver it.
Hi everyone, I'm Sarah Grant and I'm a commissioning editor at Epigeum. I was heavily involved in the Enhancing Research Impact programme, and I'll be demonstrating the programme for you later during this webinar.
Thanks, Sarah. Thanks, Jed. So just a quick look at the agenda before we get started. So first we'll have a look at Epigeum itself. So we're the organization that puts together the programs through a collaborative model, and it's quite unique, so I'll briefly touch on this. Then we'll move on to Dr. Jed Hall's presentation, where he will cover the background and vision for the Enhancing Research Impact program. Following this, Sarah will provide you with a program overview of Enhancing Research Impact and also a live demonstration. We will then wrap up with a question and answer session. As I mentioned in the beginning, please do feel free to type up your questions in the questions panel on the right-hand side as the webinar progresses. So a little bit about Epigeum. We were founded in 2005 as a spin-out originally from Imperial College London. We were acquired by Oxford University Press in May of last year. Oxford University Press are actually a division of Oxford University, so we're still within the not-for-profit organization in a higher education context and still very much focused on creating high-quality learning materials. To date, in the decade since we have been formed, we have created over 92 online courses across 19 different programs, and we currently have 7 in development. We're an increasingly globally focused organization and have worked with over 260 universities across 30 different countries worldwide to date. We have worked with over 30 institutions across Australia and New Zealand as well. And this is a map just to show you what countries we have been involved with in the development of our courses. So now I'd like to show you a very brief video in which we will explain our development process to you.
The story of an Epigeum course. We come up with an idea and we consult widely to develop and fine-tune it. We commission a team of expert authors to write it and a team of expert reviewers to help them. We commission a lead advisor who gives strategic vision and leadership. And we bring together a team of universities who form a development group to give feedback on our plans and prototypes and to make sure the product meets their needs. The collaborations we build are drawn from across the world and often involve input from over 50 academics, as well as our team of in-house specialists. Because we believe that collaboration and iteration are the key to producing truly innovative and effective products. So we bring everyone together for a launch workshop at the start of each project. It's a great mixing pot where the creative juices can flow and expertise can be shared. We provide a week-long training course for our writing team to make sure they're able to get the best out of the online medium. And we provide plenty of opportunities for sampling and feedback along the way through a detailed peer review process. In fact, a typical product goes through at least 5 iterations before it's ready to be built by our in-house developers. Together, we're more than the sum of our parts, and our unique and rigorous product development process gives all collaborators access to groundbreaking courses they couldn't have created alone. Here's what some of our customers have to say. Our products are used by over 200 institutions in 25 different countries. To find out more about the collaborations we're currently building, click on the Next Steps button or get in touch with us direct. We'd love to work with you.
So just to sum up some of the key points there, the development group of universities come together and share their experience at a workshop to help us create a really great online course. We recruit authors all under the guidance of a lead advisor. In the case of this program we are discussing today, that would be Dr. Jed Hall. The lead advisor is the person who has the expertise in the area who can lead and shape the vision for the program. We have a meticulous review process in place which allows the development group to look at the content of the courses, check that it matches their expectations and comment on it as well. Thus, the development group of universities are the early adopters who get to use the program and implement them at their universities. And then we make it available to other universities on a license basis, which is what we are now able to do with the completed program for enhancing research impact. So I'd like to briefly touch on implementation here, which is how the course can be used at your institution. Sarah will be showing you the course content later as part of a demonstration, so please bear in mind during this that they can be used in 3 different ways. Firstly, it can be used as a standalone academic course. You can supply the students with an online multimedia-rich course immediately at the time and place they need it, and so this would be in a self-study mode. The advantage here is that you can make the course quite personal and release training on demand, and so it is the most flexible option of the 3. Secondly, in the middle, we have the option for tutor-supported online courses. There is plenty of supplementary material available as part of the course, which can be used by tutors to enhance the course. Tutors can be used to provide feedback that cannot be provided by computers, and they can work on community-based features, give motivational messages, etc. So there's a whole tutoring side to the course that can be used if you do have the tutors. The advantage here is that the course is allowed to be more effective, but you would lose flexibility as you would tend to have a fixed start and end time. And finally, this is the most common use of our courses and programs, is that it can be used as part of a blended learning program. Typically how this works is that the students are given access to the online course ahead of a workshop, and then the workshop would really focus on consolidation and application of the material. This is considered to be maybe the most effective pedagogically, but also the least flexible. So you have this spectrum here from the most flexible on the left to the most pedagogically effective on the right. And you can also implement the course in all 3 modes at once. So hopefully that's given you a bit of background to Epigeum and how we've also put the programs together and how they can be used. I'd be happy to take any questions on this process as we're going through, but for now I'll hand over to Dr. Jed Hall.
Hi. So, as I said, I work at the University of Leeds, and my role for the last 5 years has been working with researchers across all our disciplines. Leeds covers everything from philosophy at one end, maybe all the way around the spectrum to particle physics at the other end, and pure mathematics. So we have a huge breadth of disciplines, and I'll say a bit more about that later. Next slide, please, Sarah. So I'm just going to give you a quick outline as to about what I'm going to talk about. So a little bit about the background of the program, why I became involved in it, and just a few hints and tips about use of the program. Looking back on the implementation side of things, from my perspective, I'd really encourage you to look at really the latter of the 2 implementation routes. I don't think that providing it as a standalone will solve all your issues with helping your staff to engage with impact. It is a kind of feels new, even if it really isn't, and that's one of the challenges to get around. So I'll focus in on that towards the end of the talk. Next slide, please, Sarah. So really, looking at the vision for me, I kind of really wanted it to be around encouragement and motivation for researchers to think about what their research will leave behind, what difference will it make to the world beyond academia. And that's an exciting and hopefully motivational, but sometimes can feel quite an immense undertaking, especially if we think about some of the major challenges that the world has that research can engage with and help it solve. So that's the kind of vision for the course. Really, it isn't about assessment. So next slide, please, Sarah. So kind of moving on there, you know, it really is about that purpose, and I use this quote from Goethe a lot when I'm talking to researchers across the university and outside. And actually I go a little bit further and talk about what my stance is in relation to impact, because sometimes you're met with people who think there's something dirty about it or not quite as pure as research. So my stance is actually I don't see value in knowledge as it stands. You know, knowledge, the value for me comes from doing something with it, and hopefully something that is actually beneficial for people, because one of the complexities of impact is that we can help some people and at the same time we might disadvantage others, and any researcher going on this journey needs to think about those questions in detail. But for me, it isn't about just trying to tick the box in any assessment exercise. So the only reason I'm mentioning the UK's assessment exercise, which happened in 2014, that was the first time that impact was included, is that there were nearly 7,000 impact case studies submitted from around the 145 or so universities across the UK. So actually there's a whole lot of people generating legacies from their research. So if we get people to focus in on what's my legacy, what will this research help to solve, then they should be able to respond to any assessment process and any assessment methodology that may start to happen in your parts of the world. So the impact case studies were very narrative, with evidence involved. Obviously that's sometimes a key question that people have is actually how do I prove? I might have some anecdotal evidence, but how do I start to prove what impact the research may have had? Okay, next slide, please. So a little bit about my background. I started off in chemistry. I actually, PhD is in physical chemistry, and I did research in that area, and I taught in that area. I then left higher education and worked for a technology solution consultant, really focusing in on the gas, utility, oil sector. So that was during that period we actually spent a lot of time brokering the use of research within businesses. So we were well placed to understand the business need, and we were also well placed to understand who within the university sector might be able to help the business solve that issue. And sometimes very much it was about actually here's a really fantastic technology that you actually don't know you need yet, and so we often helped make that kind of sales pitch into the business. So that's really where I guess the kind of practical application of impact came from that I now kind of rely on in the work that I do. About 10 years ago, I came back into higher education, really focusing in on training and development for researchers, mostly early stage, so PhD, people in postdoctoral positions, and moving into first tenure academic role, really supporting them to kind of develop their research vision, how to go about that, all the tools and techniques that they might need to help them build that academic career. And then in the last 5 years, I've really been focusing in on I put coaching there because really I don't do a lot of traditional training workshops. In fact, I see them very much just as a sales medium to help the researchers know who I am and what I can offer them in a kind of coaching way. So that coaching is longitudinal. It's offered for as long as the research team needs it to move their research towards the impact they're hoping for. Okay, next slide, please. So really, this slide is focusing in on why I'm really excited about this this program. It really comes from being fascinated by all types of research. I'm absolutely privileged to do the job I do. I don't have to focus in on any particular discipline. I started off as a chemist, and kind of one of the most shocking questions I was asked when I came back into higher education was, what are you? And I no longer feel that I'm defined by my discipline, and that's an interesting change of perspective. So, you know, it allows me to kind of not roam across the university and just look for interesting things, but, you know, I use that fascination to kind of delve into the research. But as I said, you know, my stance is that value comes from what we do with it. So the fascination is actually comes from, ooh, that's really interesting. Now, what could someone, you know, and sometimes that question brings out a few ideas of the who, and that's a crucial starting point. Once you've started to think who might be interested in this, who might be able to apply some of this, who might be able to do something with this, you've then got the basis of a starting point for where we can go with the impact. Because as soon as you've got a who, you can think, well, can I find somebody who's representative of that group who might be able to help me firm up what the impact could be, and if I'm right. So that's a kind of really important starting point, is thinking about the who. But my fascination for research doesn't come from, ooh, that's really clever. How do you do that? You know, when people start talking about methodology, I kind of usually glaze over and go, you know, can we get onto something that's more interesting for me? Obviously, it's interesting for them. So next slide, please, Sarah. So I mentioned Leeds is a very broad university in terms of its disciplinary spectrum. So I've worked with people across the university. This slide's actually slightly outdated because I've recently started working with theoretical physicists who weren't on this slide. So I had scientists, but usually science within the kind of chemical, biological area that I've previously worked with. But I've also worked with people undertaking music research. So that's things around musical archives, and also how people interact with music through through hearing aids, which is an interesting challenge because hearing aids are often optimized just for vocal part of the auditory spectrum. Worked with all sorts of different types of social science researchers, environmental scientists, philosophers, and medics, clinicians, and people working in that kind of area. So it's given me, as I said, it's given me a really interesting look across a huge range of different disciplines, and that's opened up a chance to kind of understand how impact might happen in those different spaces. And really the learning from that is actually impact isn't driven by the discipline, it's driven by those who can use it, which may not, and is usually not, the same type of people. So the philosophers probably won't be having an impact with just philosophers. In fact, it's highly likely that it'll be outside of that domain. Okay, next slide please, Sarah. So moving a little bit deeper, that kind of work has really kind of shown that impact happens through really a relational approach. We have to work out those who, we have to develop relationships with people in those groups, and really to really empathize and understand what they are challenged with, what's going on in their context, and how best can I help that knowledge to translate into that context. The other thing about it being a relational approach is that it isn't it's never actually just that one-way exchange of knowledge. That's really important to try and get researchers to understand, that if they engage with people in that kind of deeper way, you know, having really purposeful conversations with potential people who could use the research, that they will get just as much information and valuable understanding as those who could use the research do. And that relational approach really underpins the curriculum content across the whole program. Okay, next slide please, Sarah. So what's really the point of the program? So for me, I think it's the content helps get people to the same starting point. So it helps to ensure that people have a real clarity about what impact is. It helps them to kind of be given the permission to go and engage with impact, that it isn't less rigorous than doing the research, and it isn't less valuable. So for me, the curriculum is around ensuring that people are clear about that and dispelling the myths. One colleague I work with a lot is a guy called Mark Reed, who has written a recent book on impact. He gave a story recently of a colleague who is now a kind of ex-colleague, who introduced a presentation at a workshop with people from outside the university, saying, this will help me get lots of evidence for impact in the next ref. And that immediately turned off the people in the audience, because it immediately feels like you're trying to get things from them, and that's not what it's about. So really, it's really focusing in on dispelling those myths and moving people away from the assessment. That's not what should be driving their behaviours. So really, it's around that kind of dispelling myths ensuring people are clear what impact is and isn't, and what its purpose is. I then think really there needs to be a kind of whole infrastructure at your universities that help take that people from that starting point and give them the tools and the support and maybe the coaching or mentoring to help them move through that journey. So, for instance, at Leeds we have that coaching and mentoring strand. We have small amounts of funding to start priming relationships, because that can take, it often isn't costly in monetary terms, but it's often costly in terms of time to kind of build those relationships. And we also reward impact achievements. So that's, we now have impact prizes that are awarded by the Vice-Chancellor, as well as kind of large-scale events to celebrate that impact, just as much as we have large-scale events to celebrate academic achievements. Okay, next slide, please. So, things that that I think you need to consider if you want to implement this program at your institution. A lot of the work that's been looking at people who have been part of that 7,000 case studies that were submitted to REF. Obviously there's been some research now starting to happen in the UK to kind of look for indicators of success. Let's put it that way. And one of the key indicators is actually that those who tend to have impact are those who want to have impact, and that's that kind of feels like it's a kind of obvious thing to say, but if you relate it to academic freedom, I'd encourage you to kind of talk about it in those ways. Nobody's telling any researcher what questions they should be investigating, and actually you want them to be as free in generating the impact that they value. So, you know, if you can get those aligned, you know, they're really invested in answering the research questions that really intrigue them, and they're also really invested in the impact that may arise from that research, then that's the great starting point, really. Compulsion, assessment, etc., can really be counterproductive in that scenario, and we certainly try to prevent that kind of compulsion. Obviously, we recognise that the assessment process in the UK now means that we need to generate impact, and we need to capture it effectively, but that is really not forcing people to engage with impact if that's not their motivation. The relation approach does get people to think about it being a team game. So that's the team within the university and the team beyond the university. So it's only those who want to engage with that team that we try to support as actively as we can. Now, the other thing to consider is the kind of scale of the challenge. You know, sometimes you can get the sense of, you know, you really want me to change the world? Come on, this is just too big for any one person. So the curriculum does help people to think about realistic and credible impact goals. So the support around that really needs to try and think about that. So don't just think of the kind of long-term, you know, the equivalent of kind of solving climate change or curing cancer type type impacts, but those smaller impacts along the way that might be heading towards those incredible challenges that we're all faced with. So try and think about it in that kind of, I'm not going to say don't be ambitious. I want people to be ambitious. I want people to be excited by it. But I don't think that can lead to kind of, oh, it's too big, and that might lead to inaction if people aren't encouraged to think about it in a more realistic way. And as I've mentioned a number of times, impact is really all about relationships, and it's absolutely crucial, especially for people in very fundamental areas like your theoretical mathematics, researchers, etc., so people like them, for them to be really well networked with other disciplines, because the application area for really theoretical maths won't be within theoretical maths. Obviously, research can generate a rolling ball, but that's not, more theoretical maths is not about changing the world, but doing something with it in maybe a different area. An engineer applying some of those algorithms and tools might lead to a change in the world. So I always try to encourage the most fundamental researchers to be the widest networked, certainly within the university, and as a result of using the networks of people in other disciplines to really, they're ultimately the most networked outside of the academy, and that can be a big step change for people. So relationships also need energy and effort and empathy, so we have to work with that. We have to try and get people to think about what's the context for that person that I want to work with, what are the challenges, what are they pressured by, what might really help them in that circumstance, but really try and ensure that all this takes energy and effort on the part of the researcher. So it's trying to make sure that they understand how to make them mutually beneficial rather than just be one way, because you can, when a relationship is just one way, it very quickly ends, and that's something to bear in mind. Okay, I think that's all I wanted to say. So I'll leave you now and answer any questions you may have that have come from that.
Thank you very much, Jed. Now I'll hand over to Sarah. Just a reminder to the audience, if you do have any questions for Dr. Jed Hall, please do type them up in the questions panel, and we will address these after Sarah's presentation. So over to you, Sarah.
Hi everyone, I'm just sharing my screen with you now. Bear with me 1 second. There we go. So I just wanted to start off really by giving you some background information about the programme. So Enhancing Research Impact is an online programme of 4 courses designed to help early to mid-career researchers achieve impact with their research, to develop their understanding of research impact, explore ways to maximise their impact, and equip them with the tools to promote their academic work more effectively. The programme is split into a short introductory course, a course on the research impact process, the tools and techniques for impacts, and then a final course on writing about impact. The core programme should take approximately 6 hours to complete, but as Sarah mentioned before, we do also provide supplementary activities, and there's 24 hours worth of those for this programme. And these are for researchers to complete either by themselves alongside the core content or in workshops as part of a blended learning approach. So I'm going to move swiftly on to just demonstrating the programme, because that should really just speak for itself. So first of all, I just want to point out a few of the pedagogical features contained within each of our screens. So you'll see here at the top of the screen, we always have a learning outcome, which outlines what's going to be covered in the screen and what you should have learned or should be able to do after completing the screen. So for example, by the end of this screen, researchers will understand what research impact is and what it means in different contexts. We also give an estimate at the top here of how long it will take you to work through the screen. So for instance, we've estimated that this screen will take 7 minutes to complete. They don't tend to be much longer than that. They tend to be more around the 5-minute mark. But it will depend on obviously the content of the screen. This one here contains a video that I'll talk about later, and that does tend to bump up the time a bit there. Another key pedagogical feature we have in our screens is you are able to view them in a text-only version, which strips out all the interactivity. And this ensures that our courses are fully accessible to anyone using a screen reader or anyone who's unable to use the interactive version for whatever reason. You'll notice here as well that they're able to print the pages. So if I just switch back to the interactive version there, moving on to this screen on types of impact, you'll notice that throughout our courses we have these little boxes which we call pods, which lie on the right-hand side of the screens, and these contain supplementary information, so links, definitions, activities that fall kind of outside of the minutes mark. So over here we have a useful links pod, just to kind of add extra resources throughout, or to kind of add a little tidbit of advice. So now let's look at the actual courses in more detail. So course 1, the one I've got open now, is really just an introduction to research impact. So what is it? Why should I do it? How is it assessed? And really this course is about setting the scene for what's to come and gets researchers thinking more broadly about why their research is important, what motivates them, and to start them thinking ahead. So I'll start off by showing you this screen, which is on types of impact. One of the key messages of this programme is that while it's impossible to predict all of the impact your research may generate at the outset, it's important to think both seriously and broadly about the possibilities. And a good place to start doing this is by thinking about the different types of impact you might have and who might benefit. So what we have here is a tabbing activity that takes you through all of the different impact types. So here we have economic impacts. We can look at a definition and an example, and then we can scroll through all the different types of societal impacts. Again here, policy and public service impacts, and so on. If we scroll down to this activity here, we then ask researchers to apply what they've learned by matching examples of impact with the impact type. So the impact types that they will have seen in the previous activity are listed down here. And then what we have here are real examples of impact actually taken from applications to the UK REF. The idea is that you would drag these across. So an obvious one here would be a legal impact. We might have an economic impact somewhere, and so on. So that really tests that knowledge and helps give them examples. And one of the points of this activity that we mentioned below as well is that actually not everything falls into a neat box. Some things will fall into several areas. For example, a research project that developed a new e-learning program, making religious art more widely available to the public, will have a cultural impact and a technological impact and a societal impact. But really the idea behind this screen is to just get them thinking more broadly about the types of impact that they might potentially achieve. Let's look at this screen and what motivates your research here as well. So this screen is an important one because it encourages researchers to think about why they should be motivated to achieve impact. And one of the ways in our courses that we try and represent a peer voice is by using poll activities. So as you can see here, researchers are asked to reflect on what motivates them to do their research. They then select 3 options and cast their vote. So I might say, actually, what motivates me is problem solving, but also media exposure. I'm very excited about that. But I also really want to improve quality of life. So you can cast your vote, and it will really just demonstrate all of the different votes that other people have cast as well. So it allows them to kind of align their motivations with their peers. And if you were to purchase this product on our hosted system, that would be not just within your institution, but everybody who is using the Epigeum program, the ERI program. So part of the reason for this exercise in particular is to get academics thinking about how their motivations for impact might align with their motivations for doing research in the first place. And also just to kind of dispel that myth that impact is entirely extrinsically motivated. So I'll just quickly have a look at the final screen of course 1, which is on what your impact aims are, and show you one of our cooler activities here, which is our comic book features. So what we have here is an example of 2 researchers discussing approaches for getting the attention of an MP. So what they've decided here is that one of their impact aims is to make a difference to policy, and in order to do that they're trying to enlist the help of an MP, and it's really just a conversation between 2 researchers about how the kind of mistakes one of them's making and someone more experienced coming in and really helping them out. You know, so here I think you should also think more broadly about who you're targeting. Don't just contact one MP, do your research. What, you know, then his question, what, you know, what if that doesn't happen? More advice. And really the idea behind this activity is so that we're not just giving them a bullet point list really of suggestions. It's more of an interaction that they can possibly relate to. It might encourage them to go and speak to colleagues within their own department. So I'll move now on to course 2. So this course provides an overview of what's involved in the research impact process. So we look in detail at how to plan for impact from the outset, including setting impact goals, identifying stakeholders, designing impact-related activities, and building stakeholder relationships. We also look in some detail at funding for impact, in particular what to include about impact in a funding application, and how to justify impact-related costs. We know that obviously impact is becoming more important across the world for funding, so it's important that academics know how to approach that. And then we finish by looking at how to capture and provide evidence of impact and introduce the steps involved in the evaluation process. So by the end of this course, researchers should understand what's involved in that process and feel confident to start planning their own impact journeys. So I'll start off by showing you this screen on types of impact-related activities. So if I scroll down here again, we'll look at an activity here. This one really just looks at the different types of activities you might consider. So this is more about engagement. So for example, here we have training and development activities, commercial and enterprise related activities, developing new resources, policy related activities, and of course public engagement. And this is really just to give them some ideas and to encourage researchers again to think more broadly about the kinds of activities they might undertake to achieve impact. One of the reasons I wanted to showcase the screen is because of the video content, and throughout this program you'll find short video clips taken from interviews we've conducted in Australia and the UK, from interviews we've conducted with academics and impact experts. So here what we have is a video with Professor Hester Parr about how she developed new training resources for the police based on her research into what happens to people when they go missing. And the program is really full of these kinds of case studies, people that had successful impact, people that perhaps haven't had so much success, just talking about how they generated the ideas, what their approaches were. The idea behind this really is just researchers inspiring researchers. It's not just us prescribing what people, what researchers should be doing. It's really hearing from successful people, other researchers about what they've done. I'll just quickly as well scroll down here to look at one of our screens on capturing evidence of impact. Again, a really important thing that Jed mentioned earlier is, okay, so I've had an impact, but obviously you're going to need to prove that to some extent. It's not enough just to say, well, I was on a radio show. How has that actually had an impact? and it can be quite difficult to capture that evidence. So this screen looks at the importance of doing that on an ongoing basis, and there's some advice at the top of the screen about research information management systems that you can use to do this. But what I think is most interesting about this screen is using social media to capture evidence of impact. And what we have here is a fictional example that takes you through how researchers might use social media to capture evidence of impact. So we've kind of introduced this fake persona here, senior academic whose research is on combating the adverse effects of dementia, and then we take through him. He takes you kind of through the steps that you might use social media to capture evidence. So we've got him kind of setting up a Twitter account. He uses dementia in every tweet. He posts and tags some of his network of followers into his posts, and tweets about his own research, and includes links to relevant news items and websites. He notices the more he tweets, the more citations he receives. He gets a direct message from a TV production company, and he tweets about the upcoming interview, posts about it on Facebook, receiving 150 likes. He sets up a Scoop It account, which he uses to feed. He uses a Scoop It feed to record instances of where he's been mentioned in the news and tweets about those. He sets up a blog and so on, really. So that's just to help researchers think, how can I use social media to my advantage, and how can I use it to capture evidence of the impact that I'm achieving. So on to course 3 now. So course 3 really builds on course 2 by providing practical advice and guidance on how to achieve impact, including an overview of tools, methods and approaches that can help researchers throughout the research process, from initial project planning through to evaluation and beyond. And really, so course 2 is more about, what is the process, and course 3 then is about, okay, well, I know what the process is, but how am I actually going to go about achieving that? And I'm going to showcase here one of my absolutely favourite screens in the whole programme, which is our screen on conducting a stakeholder analysis. So what we've set up here is an activity that works. The inspiration came from a kind of a dating website idea, that what you'll be presented with is you can choose your project at the outset, and we have one from a clinical nutritionist perspective and one from food historian, so to represent more than one discipline, really. So I'll select this one here. And like with a dating app, what you're done is you're presented with potential matches, really. So we've looked at on the previous page at what the project is, and now we're going to match that project with potential stakeholders. And so you can look on each of these things and you get a little profile on each of them. So here we have a full-time mum. She essentially runs a kind of Mumsnet type program online. And then what you do is you'd go through, and based on this and based on the profile you're given on the first page, answer these questions. So how the stakeholder group contributes to your research impact goals, how they contribute to achieving those goals, how they'll benefit from engaging with the research project, and whether they're willing to engage with the research project. And so you get to write those entries in there, and then you can save them here. And the idea is to go through each of the different profiles here. As you scroll down the page, they're then introduced to a power interest grid. They can click on here and it gives them a little bit of information about each of the different areas in that grid. And then if we scroll down again we're back to those original projects, and here, based on what you answered in the previous screens, you will then plot those profiles onto the grid itself. So we had Mary Green, who we saw is from that kind of Mumsnet thing, and what you do is you drag and drop them onto the grid. I'm not sure if I quite remember who, yeah, so it will tell you if it's the wrong one. And then at the end what you'll have is a portfolio activity here, which is on the right hand side, which is essentially apply what you've learned. Now you've gone through the process for a fictional project, have a go at doing this for your current project. So yeah, I love this screen. I find it really interactive. There's lots of instructions throughout, so it's not as complicated perhaps as it looks, and it's just a fun way really of thinking about, okay, I've got all of these potential stakeholders, but which ones should I actually work with? Because you're not going to have time to work with everybody. Moving down quickly to a screen on writing for impact on audiences approaches. What I really like about this screen is this interactive graphic that we have, which has taken, what we've done is we've included a graphic with tips for writing an academic blog, and it's based on an example from a successful impact blog by Professor Kathy Parker, the Professor of Marketing and Retail Enterprise at Manchester Met University Business School. And the idea is, okay, how can I go about writing a successful impact blog? And you go to click on the little things here, and they give you some little tips as you go along. I'll try and wrap this up quickly and move on just to talk about course 4 briefly. So course 4, the final course in the programme, the aim of this course really is to help researchers consolidate what they've learned throughout taking the programme into a set of practical materials to support them on their impact journeys. So for each screen, the main content provides a recap and further advice on a particular topic, and it also includes a downloadable template. So let me just come down here. This downloadable template is in a portfolio activity, but what we've done is we've implemented it in the main part of the screen rather than having it off to the right-hand side to really emphasize that this is something we want them to be doing. So, for example, they might be a series of review questions. So if I click, actually I've already got it downloaded, so I'll just pop it up. So what you'll be provided with kind of these templates really that researchers would go away and fill in. And this is what you might use as part of that blended learning approach. What I wanted to show you on this screen is that we have these animations. This is one of our key pedagogical features, and are really a great way of explaining complex processes in an interesting and engaging way. So here what we have is a presentation illustrating what information you need to convey to your funder. I'll just play this so that you get a brief idea. I'll just show you a quick one. That's going to play for me. Oh, maybe that's not going to work for us right now. But each of our videos and our presentations do have a transcript that provides all the information in it. It's just quite interesting if something is quite complex to have it presented to you in a presentation style. So before I finish up, one thing I really wanted to emphasize is that ERI is packed full of real-life interviews, practice scenarios and case studies, and we felt that this programme in particular it was important to showcase excellent research and to represent a broad range of disciplines. So thanks for listening. Hopefully that's given you a bit of a feel for the ERI programme, and I'll move back to Sarah now.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Okay, so I have a couple of questions here. One of them's for Jed. Jed, this is a question for you. So what are the most common issues you have found when working with researchers trying to achieve impact?
Probably the most common one with people at the fundamental end is I just can't envisage what it could be. You know, it seems like too far away in time, maybe too far away from their experience for them to kind of be able to make it feel real and even start to have a, you know, start to create a kind of even a thought of what it could be. So that's often a challenge for people in the kind of very fundamental areas of research. People that maybe are in the more applied area can often be challenged by just picking what impact is the most likely. And that's where I try to work with that kind of motivational side of things. Well, which one excites you the most? If you can think of a number of different impacts, which one excites you the most? Or which one might happen first and is necessary to kind of lead to the one that excites you the most? So those are often the kind of key challenges at the kind of different ends of the research spectrum. obviously there are people who, just don't want to engage with delivering impact. They feel it takes them away from what they really should be doing. So with that one, we try to get them to think about what benefits could come in to kind of maybe influence their future research strategy if they did engage with external stakeholders. So those are the kind of often the key challenges that you come across often. And then the tools, how do I talk to an MP? That's a common one.
Thanks, Jed. So I don't think we have any more questions at this point. So now on my screen you can see our contact details. Some of you may have already been in touch with us in regards to the Enhancing Research Impact Programme. We can give you a lot more detail in regards to pricing and implementation of this programme at your institution, so please do contact us if you have any questions. We are also able to provide you with a free trial of Enhancing Research Impact if you are interested in accessing the programme yourself. We will also send out a recording of this presentation to you so you can share it with the relevant colleagues who may find this of interest. So thank you very much for attending this webinar today. I hope you have a good rest of the day and we look forward to hearing from you. Thank you also to Dr. Jed Hall and Sarah Grant as well for participating in the webinar today. Thank you very much.